Assalamu alaikum, ladies. Alhamdulillah, I finally did it. I actually wrote a book. It's dedicated to all the single Muslim mothers out there, hence the name, How to Be a Single Muslim Mum. Inshallah, it's available as an ebook, paperback, and it will be available as an audio. Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu feekum, sisters, for the support. Check out the link in the description to get yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of the Niqabi Diaries, Season 4. Alhamdulillah, we have with us another return guest, Sister Aisha, also known as the Scottish Revert Teacher. Alhamdulillah, somebody very close and dear to my heart. Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless her. So, Sister, I'll let you introduce yourself for the listeners because I'm not good with introductions anyways. But yeah, tell us about yourself, inshallah, for those who don't know you.
My name is Aisha Murray. I'm also known as the Scottish Revert Teacher. I'm on YouTube and Instagram for dawah purposes. But yeah, just to be a part of good and remembrance online, inshallah.
Okay, great. So alhamdulillah, today I wanted to talk to Sister Aisha particularly because obviously there's she's a return guest, and what I'm doing with return guests on the podcast this season is basically talking about lifestyle and everyday things. So for example, instead of talking about the niqab, yes, it's the Niqabi Diaries, but we know that sisters who wear the niqab and Muslim women in general, we are more than just what we wear. We're more than just our clothes and things like that. So there's other things in our lives that have an impact on how we practice Islam. We have to make adjustments in our life so we can practice Islam properly according to our circumstances. So Sister Aisha is a mother of 4 children, Allah Mubarak, and as far as I believe, I think you have 2 sons that have been diagnosed with autism. So today we really want to talk a bit about autism because I think that in the Muslim community it's something which there are many families which have been touched with children who have autism, for example, and yet I feel personally that there's probably still a lack of understanding in some Muslim cultures. Maybe not so much in the West as it may be in Africa and Asian countries. I know here in Ghana, for example, I think if you say autism, nobody's even going to know what you're talking about. I have got a Nigerian friend, another sister who's Nigerian, and she has a son who's autistic, and she said, it's like something that she hesitates to visit her home country because when she goes there, people just want to basically take the boy and start doing a bunch of ruqya and trying to get the demons out of him because they think it's like jinn possession or something like that. So people have different ideas as to what autism is or isn't. So that's why I would like to talk to Sister Aisha today, and also just to find out how to affect her life on a day-to-day basis. Are there any extra things that you need to be doing, for example, in order to cater for having children with autism, and how the community around you can make life easier by having more awareness, for example. So these kind of things that we're going to talk about today, inshallah. So Sister Aisha, could you talk to us a little bit about how you got to know that your sons were autistic, the ones that you found out about? How did it come about? What were the signs? Did you have suspicions?
I have 2 sons who have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, which is a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain. People with ASD often have issues communicating. They have issues like maybe sensory issues. They have a lot of sometimes social issues or behavioural issues. So yeah, that's pretty much what it is summed up. How I recognised my sons having it. Well, my youngest son got diagnosed first, and I would say that his autism was more obvious than my older son's, at the time at least. I actually realised when he was a baby, like when he was really young, before he was at the age where he would be expected to talk, because he wouldn't eat certain things and he would freak out about certain things. Just wouldn't be an issue. I'm going to try my best to explain it, but sometimes it's really hard to articulate it. But let me give you an example. So usually the process of a child in terms of their eating, their development of their eating, is they have their milk and they start to have like sort of soft foods, and that sort of develops up. But my son refused to eat the baby food, like the jars of baby food. He didn't like the consistency. Okay. No, I just put it down that he didn't like the food itself. But the more I tried to feed him, the more that he would like spit it out or he would gag. And it didn't really matter what the flavours were, you know. I realised at some point that it wasn't about the flavours or the food itself. It was about the consistency, to the point where when he got to about, you know, between the ages of 1 and 2, I had to feed him really dry food. It was the only thing that he would eat. So I would feed him things like couscous and salmon or rice and chicken. I would have to break it down, obviously, but these were the only foods that he would eat. Anything else you tried to give him, if you tried to give him pasta, if you tried to give him anything with a sauce, you know, he wouldn't eat it. Even butter on toast, the fact that the butter wets the toast, he wouldn't eat it. But if you were to give him a bit of dry toast, he would eat it. So, and with that, for me as a parent, came a lot of guilt and sort of overthinking, am I doing something wrong, and things like that. But as he started to get older and he was expected to talk, he just never spoke. Like he remembered a lot of vocabulary, but he wouldn't communicate like a kid would at that age. Like he wouldn't try to form sentences. He would just repeat maybe vocabulary or things like that. And sometimes it would be really advanced vocabulary. So it was just having a huge development on one side and then nothing in the next. It started, I started to suspect that maybe something else was going on because of that.
Okay, subhanallah. So what was the next step that you took then? Like, did you suspect it could be possibly autism, or did you know anything about autism at the time?
I did suspect, and I did say it to the people around me at the time, but I did get a lot of backlash. So there was a lot of me expressing my concerns and me being told that, you know, I'm being an extreme mother or an extreme other sense of myself, like, you know, maybe it's my race that's making me come up with this sort of stuff, you know, or it's the fact that I'm Western. It's the fact that I'm Western, you know, that's making me come up with these ideas. And really it's just my lack of parents abilities. Even though this was my 4th child, I was an absolute expert. To a degree, obviously, at this point, you know, because there was quite a big age gap. But yeah, no, so I did suspect it very early on, but I just never knew what to do or how to go about it. Not until we got older and he was expected to start school and he still couldn't talk. And he had a lot of sensory issues as well. Like, he would only wear one particular jacket. He couldn't put socks on because of the lining in the socks would irritate him. And yeah, and you couldn't with kids who don't have such learning disabilities, you can just sort of say, I know it's uncomfortable, but you have to wear it, let's go. But you can't do that with an autistic child. They will have a full scale sort of reaction to it. So you have to accommodate. You can try and fight it, but it doesn't last long. It's just easier to accommodate it and try and find ways around it. So I did go into school, before he was about to start and say to the school, express to the school, I think he has autism, but he hasn't been diagnosed. He can't talk, he can't do this, he has issues with this, he has issues with that. And the school were fantastic and just took it in their stride, and through that we got the right services involved, and eventually he got diagnosed.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So what was that like for you? Did you feel like relieved that you was right, or like relieved at least now that you can help him? Like what was that moment like for you when he was actually diagnosed?
You know, it was extremely overwhelming, because I knew, you know, you just know. And I'm not like this, my parenting style is not one that babies her kids, you know. I'm quite strict. I have high expectations because I know that my kids are amazing and capable. So I try to push them and encourage them. But with my younger two, it was just different, you know, it was just different. I was forced to sort of recognise that not all kids are the same and you can't expect the same from all kids. And I guess hearing someone else say, you know, you're right, when I was getting total opposition elsewhere, it was just a relief, I guess. And I wanted help for them. I wanted to be able to do the kids justice, and I just felt that I wasn't equipped to do it. So I guess getting that diagnosis was that first step to being more helpful for them, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. What was your next step then? Like, how did your life change from that moment, and how did you what things did you have to do to start helping him to actually, you know, function or improve his life?
So alhamdulillah, I think I was fortunate in the sense where I was a teacher, right? And when you are a teacher, you are trained to accommodate differences. And I don't just mean sort of like, you know, the Equality Act, you know, different things that people stand for, but you're also trained to accommodate people's learning differences, people's learning strengths and weaknesses. And, you know, I was sort of running courses, so I would also be sort of putting that sort of expectation out there on the teachers who were teaching on my course, you know. So I already was familiar with sort of looking at a situation and adapting it and customizing it to the individuals that I was responsible for. So I think I took that and just tried to increase my knowledge on how people with ASD, different ways that they learn, because there's not a one size fits all situation when it comes to ASD. Everyone is different. Their traits are different. And our challenges are different. So you do have to both learn sort of the common traits and different ways to sort of help them in one sense, but you also really need to study your child as an individual as well, and try and accommodate them as an individual, see what works for them. If it doesn't work, change it, adapt it, figure it out, but throw it in the bin sometimes and, you know, try something new. So it is a lot of paying attention, a lot of time that, you know, we already give our kids time, but it's more so, you know, you really need to put your thinking cap on. You really need to sort of observe and be present so that you can try and do your best by them.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, how does it affect their development and learning? So if for example, you said you're a teacher, so from your perspective, like, can you give like an example of like how your sons with autism, like how they're like educated or how they're helped to like learn compared to a child that doesn't have autism? Because in general, teaching is one of those things which is it has to, for me, I personally think that in order to be a good teacher, you need to be able to be quite dynamic anyways, and know that every child has a different way of learning. So, you know, in your experience, is there much difference, or would you just say, like, you know, it's like more like just having to be dynamic as you would with any other child?
Yeah, both of my sons' autistic traits and needs are different. There's some commonalities to an extent, but they're very different. So my youngest, he was mute up until you know, a few years ago. So yeah, that was huge, because you're having to learn what a person wants and needs without words or without sort of very obvious instructions. Does that make sense? Like, even if a person
Yes,
is
of
not able
course.
to talk, they're able to point, they're able to, you know, they're able to communicate in a more obvious way. But with my youngest son, it wasn't like that. You really had to figure things out based on what you've noticed over time, behavioural traits over time. So like that can be a bit challenging, and it's a bit exhausting initially, but it does get better. So it does become second nature almost, which is amazing. And it you know, I think this is you know, the value you recognise as a Muslim, the blessings, the multitude of blessings that comes from Allah, and just sort of the appreciation for Allah's creation, how we adapt and how we learn to deal with our circumstances, no matter what they are, no matter how difficult they are or complicated they are. You know, it really did give me a new sense of gratitude and appreciation when I started to sort of recognise things without them actually being very obviously said. So it does eventually become somewhat second nature. And with my other son, like, so my youngest maybe, he can look you in the eye and he can always just sit down and learn. But if you were to give him like something to cut out, so he's obsessed with Minecraft. So if you were to give him like a paper craft to sit and cut out, like let's say a Minecraft character, he can listen to a full mathematics lesson whilst he's cutting this out, and you can ask him questions and he's listening and he'll be able to answer, but he's not looking at the teacher and he's not doing what kids might be doing. He's not writing it down, let's say. So like it goes against the traditional rules, and I think that's another thing that is a big learning curve, is that sometimes you have to throw the traditional stuff out the window and adapt. So it goes against the traditional rules, but it works. He learns through that. So yeah, which is amazing, right? Because like, who can do one thing with their hands and listen, take him,
that is really amazing.
Yeah.
So he's like an audio, is it audible learning? Like when you learn through like by listening.
It's not really, I suppose, being formally sort of given a name or title, but yeah, it appears that when he is distracted with his hands, or like when he's given something else to do, that he can pick things up better. If you were to sit him down and say, you know, look at the board, listen to your teacher in the traditional sense, like look at your teacher and pay attention, he wouldn't be able to do that. Like his eyes would wander. He would need something to distract him to be able to engage in that way. Which again sounds weird, and if we were to do that with every child, it wouldn't work. But I guess that's what makes him unique, that this is how he learns, and that's really what it's all about. It's about finding the way that people with autistic spectrum disorder learn, how they learn as individuals, and then accommodating that and building on it.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, it's really interesting, that, especially from the aspect of learning. So what about your family life in general? What would like a typical day look like for you guys? Because obviously you have two children who aren't autistic and then the other two who are. So how does it affect family living, like with regards to, I don't know, getting ready in the morning to go to school, for example, or like making dinner and sitting down as a family to have food? Like how has your life been affected, and how do you have to, you know, kind of adapt to, or to be able to cater to everyone?
Yeah. So I've been a parent for a long time, alhamdulillah. So with that comes a lot of learning. So alhamdulillah, we're okay. We're doing okay. The older two are fantastic, you know, and I think having family members with ASD has also given them a skill set for life that they'll be able to take on to their own families, you know, when they have them and when they get married and when they have their own children. I think the skills that they have learned through having siblings with ASD has really sort of geared them up for that, which is amazing, right? A lot of people can sort of feel sorry for siblings who have to sort of deal with some of the pressures that can come with having siblings with ASD. But I don't. I see it as an opportunity. It's a strength, and my older kids reflect that a lot. You know, alhamdulillah, I'm really blessed to have them. They're good eggs. They're good eggs. So again, both sons are different. So I've got one who works best when he has a really firm schedule. So if my schedule is on point, if I'm, you know, sort of on my game, he's on his. But then I've got one that needs constant reminding, a constant push, because he just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work like that with him. And he's not great in the mornings as well. So it can differ. I think the biggest thing is you just have to take everything day by day. You know, even me as a parent, sometimes I have bad days. So I also have to take into consideration when I'm not feeling my best self, that it's all right if things go AWOL. You just have to do your best in that moment. Like, I think before I was always trying to stick to the traditional stuff, like, okay, school starts at 9, so I need to get up at this time and, you know, get everything done. But sometimes it didn't matter how early I got up. If someone was having a bad morning, then that was it. You know, so I had to sort of throw the getting to school on time out the window sometimes and say, you know, sometimes that's going to happen and it's fine. It's not the biggest deal. What's really important is that I get them out and they get to school and they have a better rest of the day, you know. But so there is a lot of, again, adapting and dealing with situations in the way that go against the status quo. But yeah, you just have to have a lot of patience for yourself. You have to be kind to yourself. Sounds really cringe and cliche, but it's so true, because I think as women, if we are not acing parenthood, we can be really hard on ourselves and we can feel really guilty about it. But acing or succeeding doesn't always look the same. Sometimes success is just getting a pair of socks on first time without any complaints, or getting my son out the door with a different jacket. You know, like whenever my son grows or his shoes get busted and I need to get my new pair of shoes, it's a whole ordeal. they don't deal with new things very well sometimes.
For both of them?
So yes and no. Like, my youngest is a lot with sensory issues, so anything to do with clothes and this stuff, he really has a challenge with. Even weather conditions. If it's raining, like, it's almost like it hurts him. which is ridiculous, right? Because it rains all the time here in Scotland. But it's why it's so essential that I have a car, because I always find it really difficult to get him out sometimes. So my youngest has a lot of sensory issues. My other one, he's more if plans change, or if like certain things, if going back to school, he'll sort of worry and anticipate certain areas of study and sort of overthink things and that sort of thing. So yeah, they are different but the same. That's what I mean. Like it's all to do with the process of change, but they just have needs in different areas, if that makes sense.
Yes, totally, subhanallah. Definitely. Okay, so what do you think are some of the misconceptions about autism?
Probably the violence is one of them. I think everybody assumes that people who have ASD are going to be violent. And although it's not there, it's not always everything. There are people, of course, who are in that situation who, like I mentioned, sensory issues. So there's some people that might have really sensitive hearing, and if certain noises are made, their impulse after that is to be violent. So like that sort of stuff does exist, but it's not a one size fits all situation. Like I said earlier on, every person is different and individual, and it's not that they can't learn, it's just that they learn differently. And once you figure that out, you're good. You just, again, it needs a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of observation, really paying attention. So yeah, which is hard in this sort of world, because it's a rushed world. We're constantly sort of moving and have things to do and things to achieve. But ASD is one of those things that, whether you like it or not, you're slowed down. You can't just use traditional methods to get by. You can't just say, I don't care how you feel about this situation, you're going to eat it, or you're going to wear it, or you can't just force things. You have to adapt. You have to move with it. And that was very much a hard lesson for me to learn, because you know what it's like when you have more than one kid or two kids. You have to be sort of, to a degree, structured. You have to sort of move in a certain way. So I was forced to do otherwise, whether I liked it or not, and mess with me a bit, but now I see it as a strength, and it brings comfort and calmness, actually, because I'm not raising certain standards too high for myself, even though they're probably higher than most people's. I don't know. Allah knows best.
Alhamdulillah, I think that's one of the challenges of being a parent, isn't it? You always want your children to be better, and it's not like to compete with others, so specifically, but like you want them to be able to achieve the best that they can achieve. I know that obviously some parents, it's easy for us to kind of fall into this, like using our children to compete with each other as well. I've seen that a lot with people, but even just in your own family, like you still want them to just outdo themselves, if that makes sense. Like you want them to do better than you did when you was in school and growing up, and then you just have this high hope for them, because there's like obviously the future generation. So subhanallah, I think I mean, I don't know, like what kind of message would you give to parents, for example, who are going through this kind of beginning stages of maybe finding out that their children have autism, or suspecting that their children have autism?
I think, just based on my own experience, obviously, I can't speak for everyone, but I think when I first recognised that I have kids who have ASD, and more so with my youngest, because his was more sort of, because he didn't talk, I thought that was massive. I remember sort of feeling the weight of that, and I was so worried about his future. I was so worried, does this mean that he's never going to have, all the things that you expect and take for granted. Is he going to get married? Is he going to have kids? Is he going to be fulfilled and happy? What happens if I die? Who's going to look after him? All these sort of worries are really, really heavy, really, really heavy. It was a challenging time, to say the least, let me tell you. But I think what it did was actually strengthen my faith, because again, you're forced to recognise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're forced to have tawakkul. Alhamdulillah, we do that, we honour, and we try to do that outside of being pushed there, But it did make me recognise that, okay, maybe there's certain things in life he won't achieve. But if he doesn't achieve certain things, if he doesn't learn to pray, like all these sort of things that you expect your kids to do, if he doesn't have the ability and the skills to sort of do the everyday act of worship or fulfill traditional sort of life expectations, then it just means that you're living with and you're taking care of a person of Jannah, a person who is guaranteed Jannah. And I'm going to try not get emotional. But how much of an honour is that you're sharing a house with someone who's guaranteed Jannah? Now, I'm not saying that my son falls within that category, but at that time, that's the sort of things that I had to tell myself, right? I had to sort of comfort myself with that, which is a huge honour. A huge honour. If your priority is the dunya, then it's a weight, it's a difficulty. But if your priority is the akhirah, then you're good. You're good.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Definitely, that makes sense. SubhanAllah, something beautiful, because Allah tests us all in different ways. So I suppose, this is obviously just another test, and like you're saying, like raising them and being able to teach them how to pray and all those kind of things. I mean, in general, you're going to be getting reward as a parent for teaching your children these things, but I suppose in your case, inshallah, even more so, because they do have these other challenges which make it that little bit more difficult. Where some of us might take these things for granted, you have to think, in advance, you have to take into consideration the things that are going to affect them, and how their brains operate, and how they're going to be able to implement what they're learning, inshallah, subhanallah.
Yeah.
So would you say that autism is well accommodated within the Muslim community? As you're somebody, mashallah, Allah Mubarak, you give dawah, mashallah, Scottish revert sister, you're giving dawah and things like that. In your times giving dawah, because you're in contact with your local masajid and these kind of things. So do you think it's something which is accommodated? How do your children, do they attend to local madrasas and stuff like that?
So I have to be honest. I think there's a lot that still needs to be done. Not even just solely within the Muslim community, but outside it as well. There's just so much more that needs to be done. But within the Muslim community, of course, we could use a lot more awareness. And I think there are great people out there who have family members who have ASD, who are going into the mosques and they're trying to accommodate. The kids' mosque that they attend is amazing. I'm not going to lie, I absolutely love it. I big it up at any opportunity. And the first year when we came back to Scotland, because we moved back in 2020, before that we stayed in London. The first year we came, we couldn't attend. One, because there was still the whole COVID situation going on, but also my son wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. He was still having violent outbursts, let's say, like whenever he was triggered by whether it be a sensory issue or being in a crowd, the different things, he would sort of lash out. So as well as his speech not being there. And what really worried me as a person is that he wasn't able to communicate what was going on with him. So although I might be able to see through certain behavioural traits or certain things that he does or how he reacts to it, other people wouldn't be able to do that. And they might just see it as a behavioural thing, the fact that he's, you know, not disciplined. And you can ask my older kids, you know, no one gets away with nothing in this house. So it's not that. So I was very conscious and protective of that, I guess. So the first year I didn't, you know, sort of look into getting him in the mosque at first. Apologies. I did look into it, but I think upon reflection of looking at his needs at that time and looking at how he was handling certain things, I didn't think it would be productive. So I thought that I would leave it another year and see how things went. The next year, he had made so many developments. He was able to communicate in a way where he was understood. So we started, and he's doing well. He's doing well under that. My other child, he started straight away. He's doing great. Yeah, they just need more time than the others, though. Like, one of my sons is repeating certain things that he did last year just to try and consolidate it and solidify it. So that's what they are doing. They are accommodating. They are taking into consideration, you know, their challenges and where they're at. And yeah, I'm grateful. Not every masjid will be doing that, but you know, that's where maybe we need to get involved. That's where we need to sort of reach out and see if there's an area that we can fulfill or help with. But yeah.
So okay, I want to talk a little bit about the dawah scene in Scotland. Like, what kind of, you know, obviously you're a busy mum anyways, but what drove you to start like giving dawah, to start your channel, and how do you get involved with that?
Well, well, I'm a revert. That's the first thing. So I understand what it's like to be raised without recognition of God and without his guidance. So I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So that's definitely probably the main factor. So the next thing is the potential rewards that I can get from communicating it. I'm not going to lie. I'm selfish in that respect. I need all the good deeds I can get, inshallah. So that's definitely a second motivation, you know, and inshallah. But just I feel just having Islam and seeing how it helps me through every aspect of life. How can you not want to tell the people about that? How can you not want to share that? If more people knew and understood that, their lives would be better, therefore communities would be better, countries would be better. How can you not want to be a part of that positive change? So that's definitely sort of the motivation and main factors, I guess.
Alhamdulillah. So, okay, just a little bit like to you know, kind of the subject before. Obviously, you've got 4 kids. So, how do you fit it all in, especially having, you know, 2 sons which are autistic, and obviously you've got a busy, you know, schedule and everything, being, you know, family woman yourself. How do you manage to fit in doing the dawah?
I have no idea. I know you want me come at me like this, like really quirky and shareable answer, but I really don't know. And I probably haven't been doing well over this last year because a lot has happened. Like one of my sons had an accident at the end of last year, and that sort of dominated the year. So it has been challenging this year. Priorities, right? You have to choose and get things done.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, so right, Islam in Scotland. Are there a lot of Muslims in Scotland?
No, less than 100K. I think the last time I checked, it was between 70 and 80,000. So not too many Muslims. and the country has a population of just over 5 million. So
Oh, right, okay.
it's a small country. But yeah, not too many Muslims, not too many masjids. We have a lot in the main cities, but sort of outside of that, there's still a lot of development going on. I was actually in an island over the summer. It's called the Isle of Lewis and Harris, and they are the most northern masjid. And it's such a tiny, wee, cute, adorable place. And it only opens 2 times a week, and it only accommodates less than 100. I think it's less than 80 Muslims in the full island. So that was really cool because I had heard about it. There was not a lot, but there was like backlash in regards to getting it built. It is right next to a church, actually. So there was some backlash to building it, but a lot of the community were really supportive, and yeah, I actually got to see it with my own eyes, which is it's a lot, you know, it's a lot. I really want to see more of this in my country because I believe that Islam has the answers. Well, it's the truth, number one, and that's why it has the answers, but it has the answers to your everyday struggles and situations. So yeah, it was an honour to be there. It was an honour to see it. It was reassuring, comforting, and long may it continue.
Alhamdulillah. That must have been really quite amazing, subhanAllah. Like, it's such a remote place to have an actual masjid there, subhanAllah.
Yeah, like 80 Muslims, 80, just 80 in a full island. And it's a small island, but it's not small at the same time. So I guess it's probably, it's fantastic. Fantastic. It was really nice to see.
So the community there, like, you know, are they a community of reverts? Did you get to meet any of them? Like, what's their kind of background?
No, so I think they're the main 2 backgrounds that I'm aware of, but I could be wrong, is Muslims from South Asian community, as well as some Syrian refugees got placed there.
Okay.
But I didn't meet anyone for myself, so I can't say too much in that respect. But this is what I knew going to the island before I got there. This is what I knew. And this is one of the reasons why I was really excited to see it. And I'm actually going to put a video out, and I ask all sisters to sort of check this video out. Inshallah, you can share it on your page when I make it. I'm going to put a video out soon regarding an area on the mainland that is in real need of a masjid. Some of the Syrian community got placed there, and they got everything that people would expect them to get and need. So they got houses, they got clothes, they got, you know, food, and they got the opportunity to look for work, but they didn't have a masjid in the area, and they had to travel 4 hours sometimes to go to Friday prayer. And the community were expressing concern that some people weren't going to Friday prayers, and some people it was having a negative effect on their Islam. So the community is terrified, you know. So alhamdulillah, there's a mosque in Glasgow that has purchased an old abandoned church, and they are trying to refurbish it so that they can give that community a mosque. So they're fundraising for it, but they've been fundraising for a while, and they're just not getting the funds they need to be able to.
Sounds like a we need a GoFundMe or something like that.
I think they have one. So I'm just, as far as I'm aware, that GoFundMe ran out because, again, they've been doing this for a
Right.
while. So I don't know if they've
Okay.
recreated it or they've extended the time. I don't really know how these GoFundMe work. So I'm going to get in touch with them, and I'm going to find it, and I'm going to put a video out there. It is an opportunity for the Muslim community to sort of invest in such. It's such an important project, so essential, and this is a Muslim community that are already there who are in need. Never mind the potential good it could do for the sort of local community as a whole. So yeah, I really want to put something out there to sort of be a part of sorting that out. So inshallah, I'll keep you updated on the details of that. But yeah, it's so important, like extremely important, and inshallah things like this continue to grow for the sake of the Muslim community in Scotland and for the benefits that it can also have to the local community, because we know that the Muslims are very hospitable. We know that they can do a lot of good and they invest a lot of time in the community. So why wouldn't we want to expand on that?
Okay, cool. So with such a project, do you find that as Muslims are quite a minority in Scotland, that there's kind of any knock-on effects? I mean, for example, obviously they want to use an old abandoned church to basically convert it into a mosque. Is there any kind of issues in the community are there any kind of issues in the non-Muslim community with regards to such projects?
I do think that sometimes there is a little bit of a sort of backlash, because people are often afraid of change, and I think because of the stereotypes and misconceptions that can come with Muslims and Islam, there can be that apprehension, that fear that Scotland is going to lose its identity. But I don't think. I think anybody who knows the Muslim community will know that that's not in fact the case. Like there's an Islamic tartan, for example. So Muslims have created their own tartan here, so that they can have that.
Wow, you're gonna have to send me a picture of that so we can put it up. Literally, I want to see that.
Yeah, and also a lot of Muslim. There's also a lot of things like food, for example, like traditional Scottish breakfasts and main meals that even the Muslims have found ways to make that halal, and the Muslim community love it. So it's very much a part of them. Alhamdulillah, what I love about Scotland is, when you think of the word nationalism, you sort of think about people trying to preserve a certain traditional idea of what it means to be a person from a certain nation. But Scotland, isn't really like that. The nationalism is that if you're here and you're sort of invested and you're you love it, we love it, and the conditions are very little, it's so accommodating and embraces differences. Majority of the time, it's not perfect, nowhere is, but I love the fact that even a Scottish person will argue for their neighbour. Let's say their neighbour is from South Asia, even their Scottish neighbour will argue sometimes that maybe they're more Scottish than the person they know down the road because he's always got a square sausage in his fridge or something,
Wow.
Wow. The Scottish people as a whole, as a culture, they're really, really nice, welcoming people, and a lot of that has to do with our history. A lot of that has to do with our past, their trials and tribulations. We're definitely a wee bit different from other cultures nearby. But yeah, it again doesn't make us perfect, but there's a lot of goodness. There's a lot of goodness in it, and yeah, the Scottish Muslims are Scottish Muslims. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So would you say that, based on like, what you said about the culture and stuff like that, do you think that it makes it a little bit easier for you as a, Scottish Muslim woman to be able to give dawah and to talk more openly about Islam to people, or even just to represent yourself as a Muslim? Obviously, you're visibly Muslim, you wear the niqab, alhamdulillah. So like, do you feel that, this is something that it makes it easier for you to carry on, having these various identities basically, and being accepted by the people, not feeling that you don't belong, for example?
I think definitely for the most part, yeah. Actually, I was talking about that island that I went to in the summer. I was a bit nervous when going there. Not because I'm insecure about what I wear, because I've been wearing it for so long and it's like very much a part of who I am. But I was just terrified how it would be met by others, because I assumed that because their Muslim community was extremely small, that maybe I would be the first sort of Niqabi or very visible Muslim. So I was anticipating it. But do you know how many people went out their way to purposely talk to me? Like, some people purposely went out their way to talk to me, and it would just be like things like, oh, the weather's like this today, and that sort of thing. And one woman, I was standing waiting for some friends who were in a shop, and one woman just came out, and she never even got in my way, to be fair. She never. But she sort of said, oh, I'm sorry if I got in your way. I was just trying to rush. And I'm like, people weren't scared to communicate with us. And I sometimes find in the mainland, that's sometimes what it is. And I don't know if maybe that's just, like, people are more in touch with the sort of mass media in the mainland. I think in sort of these islands, people are more, working every day. They're labourers. They're outside. They're sort of in touch with other aspects of life, like nature and stuff, because that's their life, that's their surroundings. So their priorities are a wee bit different, and their sort of days a wee bit different. So I don't know if that's what it is, but I definitely have a really chilled life in Glasgow. I do have certain things that I occasionally need to deal with, but nowhere near the amount I had to deal with in the past. I do think social media has done a lot of good in that sense, that it's a lot of misconceptions have already been refuted, because people are able to learn a little bit more outside the sort of newspaper headlines about Muslims and their everyday and that sort of thing. And Muslims do invest a lot of time in the local community in Scotland. That's what I've noticed. They do try. There's not a huge Muslim community, so it could be better. But inshallah, with the growth of that, it will happen. Like, there's one mosque that gives out sort of food packages to any sort of locals, and you see queues of locals, non-Muslim locals, outside the mosque coming for those food packages. So like they do a lot. They do a lot, mashallah. Allahumma barak. May Allah reward them. But yeah, inshallah, that will increase.
Inshallah. Alhamdulillah. What I wanted to pick up on, actually, what you mentioned about when you went to that remote, quite, the further, you said it's the island, okay? Where did you say it was the most outer island?
Yeah, so no, the masjid is the most north masjid in the sort of...
Yes, the most, that's it, the most north masjid. So yeah, subhanAllah, what I wanted to pick up about what you mentioned, in the island where you went, Lewis and Harris, you said, subhanAllah, I find that personally, in my experience, I found that as well, I had similar kind of, what do we call it? Like, you have similar kind of ideas in your head, like thinking that when you're going to maybe some places a bit remote, and where they've probably never seen a Muslim person, or they even, like, obviously me being black, I think to myself, well, maybe they don't have hardly, maybe they probably don't see black people even often. Do you know what I mean? I would go to these kind of places thinking, oh, what if this and what if that? But me being me, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. So going to places like this, where you can really appreciate nature. And like you said, these kind of people, they live within the nature and they're closely in touch with nature and have respect for it. I found that personally, that even when it came to wearing the niqab, I never had any issues going to these kind of places. People's always very respectful, and I think that, I think that's one of the things people who live more like outside of the bigger cities, they have in common is like, it's just overall better manners and respect for their common like human beings. You know what I mean? Like they don't look at you and automatically judge you. It's just like you're just another person, and you might look a bit different to them, but they'll just automatically be polite and friendly, alhamdulillah. So it's nice to go to these kind of places and have these experiences, because I think that it just helps. Everybody has I think maybe in their mind some kind of apprehensive like apprehension towards like certain kind of situations or potential situations, because you think that it could be something that might end up negative. But when you actually
it's because they were experiences, let's face it.
Exactly,
when we first became Muslim, when we were first adopting hijab, when we were first adopting niqab, there was a lot that came with it. There was a lot of drama. Like, it's not easy to be a visibly Muslim woman in the West, like generally. However, it is getting better because of certain things. There is a bit more transparency and sort of access to people finding out what Islam truly is. And even if they don't choose to take it on, like, I think more people are sort of happy to have a certain level of knowledge. And obviously, because it's Islam and it's the truth, acceptance naturally, to a degree at least, comes with that. So that's great. And I do think, like, I mean, I'm not trying to say that Glasgow has a bad reputation, but Glasgow is, I just feel like everywhere outside of Glasgow is a little bit more harmless, like, in a general sense, obviously. But Glasgow is definitely, if you have a decent and peaceful life in Glasgow, then you're going to get more than that elsewhere. And I do like to go up north to the Highlands a lot, because there's a lot of nature, hiking, beaches, walks, that sort of thing. So I enjoy it. And a lot of people often sort of say, should you guys be going out there? It could be dangerous and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, no, these are some of the most safest spots in Scotland, because the people are really accepting. And some of the people come from different places, as well. So they know the world. They come from different countries. They sort of view life in the world a little bit differently sometimes. So I love it. I love it. Very, very honoured.
Alhamdulillah. So I want to talk a little bit about what you touched on about, Muslim women, like being a Muslim woman and in Scotland and things like that, and towards Muslim women in the Dawah specifically. And so more specifically, with regarding to how we dress, specifically wearing the niqab and things like that. I've seen obviously on your channel, sometimes you make videos or even on Instagram, for example, and subhanAllah, people, even though it isn't the subject of whatever video that you've made, people start asking you questions like, why are you wearing the niqab, and saying things like, oh, this is not necessary, and culture, and making all these kind of, ridiculous comments about the niqab, for example, and sometimes even the hijab itself, which completely, like, without any kind of knowledge base that goes with it, basically. But it's just subhanAllah, like, do you find that is one of the, like, something that happens often? Well, I think it's often, compared to, like, when I see your videos, I see a lot of comments like that. And I just think, well, is that all you can focus on? Do you know what I mean? Like, especially what's annoying is that it's coming from Muslims. It's not like it's coming from non-Muslims. So it's just like, well, you're a Muslim woman, you've a reefer, you've chosen to wear the niqab, and you're speaking about Islam and and talking about different issues to do with the Islam and Muslims, but yet some Muslims specifically they just can't get over the fact that you put a niqab on. And they want to see your face, and it's just like, well, why is it your business? That's my take on it. It's just like, why are you stuck on that issue? Can you not move on to something else?
Yeah, yeah, it's annoying. I'm not going to lie. I get so frustrated with it. I could be talking about a completely different topic, completely different, and then people will start focusing on the fact that I'm a Niqabi, and they're like, they ask you all the sort of traditional sort of stuff. Where is the Niqab in the Quran? They'll say stuff like it's a cultural thing, it's got nothing to do with the religion, and this sort of thing. And it's frustrating, to say the least. And I think this is definitely a negative that comes with the online sphere. And it's sort of probably the reason why I try to even increase my hijab online. It's because, I definitely don't want to just... It's almost like there's a deal with being online. If you want success online, and by success I mean like followers and sort of validation and this sort of thing, you need to fall into a certain brand or a visual brand of what it means to be a Muslim woman online. And I just cannot tolerate that. I don't like it, and I will just by being me, I'll oppose it, I guess. I don't know what is the point that I'm trying to make, but I just feel like I think this is probably a life thing generally. We're often put into situations where we'll find acceptance through losing very important aspects of ourselves. And when it comes to hijab, I refuse to do that, even with how I present myself online in terms of my speech, in terms of, but I'm trying to also be very conscious of haya. And I feel like it's almost expected that you lose aspects of that. Like your introductions have to be, sort of really eccentric, and sort of, you need to be loud, you need to be, you have to have a certain sort of tone, you have to be entertaining, you have to have a certain look. There's a lot of objectifying in it. There's a lot of sort of expectations to make you palatable, and I just don't have any place for that in my life. So it is intense, and it's probably the reason why I would say that not every Muslim sister should be online. Alhamdulillah, I'm very comfortable in not sort of seeking that sort of validation, but some people struggle with that. Some people, that's their nafs, So I would definitely say that their dawah online might look different. Maybe their dawah online would be taking snippets of scholars and important stuff on knowledge, and sort of clipping it and putting it out there, or Quran, or hadith and the sort of interpretations and things like this, putting it out there so that people can learn and understand. Dawah is definitely not there's not a one way to give dawah. There's different ways, and there's different areas of expertise that different people fall into. So I think it is a wee bit different for Muslim sisters, and there's a lot to be aware of it. There's a lot to be cautious of, and yeah, I don't know. I didn't finish that really well. But yeah, do you know what I'm saying though? Like, there's a lot.
Definitely, yeah. There's so many challenges, I think, and I think that's what people fail to realize. Like, as I said, like, people are making comments about the niqab, but it's at the end of the day. I think personally, if I'd made the decision prior to starting Niqabi Diaries that I wanted to do online dawah, I would have had to put a niqab on to do it anyways, because I'm a shy person, and for me, wearing the niqab makes it easier, and I wouldn't want to be like have my face online and like anybody, like, you know, millions and hundreds and you know, how many people being able to see me at any time. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd like that. I like to personally have that privacy in my life in general. Even before becoming Muslim, I was like that. I'm not this kind of person that wanted to have their face everywhere. I know for some people that's like their lifelong dream to be famous, but you know, for me it's not, you know. And if I was to be famous, it would be like I want to be famous for like some goods that I do, like actual some kind of positive work or something like that, not for my face, actually how I look. Do you know what I mean? So you know, and I think some people don't seem to realize that. Like I do, I've met some sisters, I've spoken to some sisters actually for the podcast too. They don't wear niqab like in their day-to-day life, but they wear it online, in their online presence, because they want to have that level of privacy, you know. And it's good, because I think to myself, like, if you are a sister,
it's the least, right?
of
But
course,
I just feel like it's a standard. It should be a standard.
it's just having that something extra to keep for yourself, you know.
Yeah.
I think to myself as well, if in future as a sister, even if you don't wear hijab, for example, doesn't mean you need to put yourself out on, like, you know, there's so many ways to do things online without even showing your face. Okay, even if you're somebody who's not wearing a hijab, for example.
Look at
exactly.
AI.
Well, that's one
Isn't
thing, but
that
even before
crazy? Yeah, no, definitely,
Exactly.
absolutely. But this is AI is taking it to other levels where your face can be taken and attached to a whole
and
other
used for anything.
person.
Exactly. It
And
can be
video,
used for
it's not even
anything.
just Photoshop now, where it can be attached to another
Exactly.
picture. It can be attached to a whole video.
Exactly.
Your voice can be changed to a certain sort of, you know, yeah, you know what I'm getting at. So like, you have to be protective, and unfortunately I think with some sisters, and I think this is probably an effect of feminism, where they have this mentality where it's like, this isn't the way it should be, so our focus should be to change that by being here. And I don't think that's the answer, because we know through the guidance that this is the way it is. There's certain natures of men and there's certain natures with women, and if we don't abide by the guidance, then there's going to be certain clashes and certain issues that happen, this being one of them. So like, it's best for us just to actually sort of rely on that guidance, because it comes from the creator, the one who knows us best, you know, and knows what's good for us, and not just in terms of like on paper what's good for us, but we know what makes us feel good internally. Like the one knows. So this is why we should always rely on that, right? And we should definitely guard ourselves and protect ourselves, you know, like we are worth it. We are worth it, you know, but we are worth protecting.
Alhamdulillah, I think that some people don't seem to realize that as a Muslim woman that wants to put themselves out there in order for the purposes of dawah, you know, apart from the hijab itself, there's the inner hijab as well. So we're trying to maintain as much modesty as possible. So even if you're not somebody who wears the niqab in you know, in your day-to-day life, if it helps you to be more modest online, or if it helps to remind you of that internal hijab that you need to have so that you can, you know, make sure you kind of stay within, you know, the boundaries of Islam as much as possible when online, then you know, so you decide to wear it, then, you know, then that's a good thing. Do you know what I mean? Because everybody, you know, it's easy to get carried away. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially if you're doing some kind of live interviews or something like that, it's easy to get carried away and forget yourself. But you know, we know as Muslim women, like when we put our hijabs on and everything, this is our uniform, and it reminds us that when we're in public, when we're in certain spaces, we have to have this level of decorum about us. Do you know what I mean? To behave in a respectful manner, you know, no matter what we're like at home. We've all got diverse and different personalities. Do you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to being outside, you know, we have to behave in a certain way, because we are representing Islam, and regardless of what people may say about, oh well, they don't like symbols, this and that. Yes, the niqab and the hijab is a symbol. It's a symbol of Islam, and if you don't like that, that's not my business. But this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran. He specifically told them as the women to lower their khimars over their jabe, over their bosoms, cover up themselves. Why? So that they will be recognized. So yes, it is a symbol.
Definitely is. You're right, and it's not what it appears to be. Like, I think a lot of people from the outside looking in, they look at what, just let's take what I'm wearing, for example. I'm wearing a kimar and a cap and that, right? They see that as really heavy and restricting and everything else, but it's not. It is, there's a lot of logic that goes into the materials that are used and the way in which a garment is sort of tailored and created and made. I'll give you a story. I was in Morocco in the summer as well, and they were having a heat wave, so it was like 47 at some points, the highest heat I've ever experienced in my life. It was interesting. I tolerated it, let me tell you. I was very proud as a Scottish person because I have never, like, we're not
like
a hot
20
country.
degrees is hot for you guys, isn't it?
Exactly. It really is. It really is. So I was fearful, but alhamdulillah, I managed it well. And I remember we were out one day, and I don't know if you know, but like in these countries, they have like sort of tourist days out that you can sort of pay for, and a shuttle will come and pick you up and pick other people up from different hotels, and they'll take you to a place, and you do whatever it is that you're going to do there. So we had went to a place, we had took a trip where we were going to go to the Atlas Mountains, and the shuttle picked me, and so this shuttle picked us up, and other people from other hotels. And we went to the Atlas Mountains, and it was so hot. It was like 46 degrees. And I was wearing pretty much what I'm wearing now. I was wearing lighter colours because they're better in the heat. But, you know, I was wearing what I'm wearing now. And some of the women were from the UK, and they were wearing, let's just say, traditional UK non-Muslim summer clothes. So a lot of skin was exposed, and they were struggling, absolutely struggling. And me, I was good. Like, I was really good, alhamdulillah. And I remember at one point we were sitting with them, and we were standing with them. We were conversating actually at the time. We weren't sitting with them at that time, but we ended up getting closer to them at that time, sitting with them, giving them dawah. So it did sort of lead there. But initially they just looked at me and they were like, you're comfortable, like those clothes, I bet you they really help you with the heat. And I was like, yeah, like they really do. A lot of people think wearing less is better in the heat because they'll be cooler, because the air is touching their skin. I'm on stuff. Sorry. So like they think that the air is touching their skin, therefore they'll be less hot, but it's really not that. I'm like walking shade. You know, I'm like walking shade. So alhamdulillah, how can you not be grateful for that? So even though we wear niqab, hijab, khimar, we cover, we conceal for the sake of Allah, because Allah has told us to do so, there's so many benefits that we get from it. Like so many, privacy, liberation, freedom, you know, and also we are protected either from the cold or we're protected from the heat. Like it's just, it's a win-win situation as far as I'm concerned.
Alhamdulillah. So yeah, these are some of the blessings that people, you know, they fail to like understand, or they, for reality is they don't really want to understand. They don't like it, so they just want to like attack these things or use it as a way to maybe discredit you as well. Because I think that's what I see like in some of the comments. It's just like almost like, oh yeah, you're a revert, and you know you've gone to the extreme because you're wearing niqab. But it's just like, what if, even if you was to say that the niqab is extreme, you know, what extreme views do you hold in general? Like they can't come up with any other extreme views that you're holding. So it's just like they want to point to the niqab as a way to kind of discredit you from what you're saying and trying to say you don't know anything about Islam, and you know therefore you shouldn't speak because you know you're giving the wrong people the wrong ideas. But the reality is, you know, this is, and do you know what is sad about it? I think if it was a case where you as a niqabi was standing on a street corner and giving dawah to people like you see some of the brothers online doing, and having these kind of discussions and, you know, really like, you know, going at it and then getting all these shahadas, what would people say then? Like they'd be like, oh, mashallah, is it? Do you know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah. I
so
think I
it's
don't know
how
if you've
people are measuring
mentioned.
things.
I don't know if you've mentioned, because you're making some good points here, but we have to just for the sake of clarity, you are referring to the backlash that I get online, which is a lot of
Yes,
Muslims coming out and saying
exactly.
it's
Yes,
not even the non-Muslim community, it's a lot of Muslims
exactly.
coming out and saying
Well,
it's
that's
extreme.
the point. Yeah,
Yeah. And the
yeah.
thing
That's
is
the point I'm making.
the Muslims who usually say it, and it's so ironic, because you can sort of, you can see that it's through a lack of knowledge, and whenever you sort of say that to them, they get really defensive. But
Of course.
one of the most common things that they say is, "Oh, because you can wear niqab during Umrah or
Yes, or
Hajj,
Hajj.
that
Yeah. SubhanAllah.
therefore you're not allowed to wear it." And you're like, right, okay, you've just came to your own conclusion from sort of half understood information.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we're not allowed to wear a niqab during Hajj and Umrah, but only because back in the day. So anybody who has been to Umrah understands that we dress in a certain way, especially the men. If you see it, they're all wearing the white garments, and they're dressed in that way to put everybody on the same level, and sort of, so the rich are with the poor, but you're not able to separate or identify them based on the fact that they're all wearing the same thing, they're all going out in the same condition. So the niqab back in the day was one of those things that was owned by more richer women. So this is why niqab in itself is not allowed. You're not allowed that separate piece of garment. But actually, there's a hadith from Aisha radiallahu anha, where she was making her way to do Umrah, I think, or Hajj. She was in a state of ihram, which is the state that you're not allowed to, it's a state of purification. That's when you're not allowed to wear niqab. And she was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and other Sahaba. And when non-mahram would pass them by, they would pull down their garments and cover their faces. So people confused with the not being allowed to wear the niqab in a state of ihram with covering your
Not being
face.
allowed to cover your face.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You,
And that's
the
what people don't
believing
get.
women covered their face. It is allowed. You see that in Saudi. You see that if you've done Umrah. But a lot of these people haven't done Umrah. They don't know. So it's a shame, because what you're doing is you're causing division within our community, and it's division that we don't need. And sometimes it's annoying, because I feel like people assume that because we adopt hijab and khimar and niqab, that because of that, we won't speak to anyone, or we don't have relationships with any other woman who doesn't do that. And it's just
Exactly.
not the case. Like, I don't see myself better than because I cover in the way that I do. That's stupid. I might be excelling better in that area, but like it's so one-sided, and there's so many different areas that we need to sort of excel in. I do think and will say that hijab and covering and even haya is a very important one for women, one of the most important ones for women. So it's by no means just another something. But I also recognise that everyone's on their own journey, and if I can be there to be a part of that, to help you, I'm there. But if you also don't want me to be a part of it, then that's also fine. Like, I'm good. I'm just trying to do my part at the same time, so
Alhamdulillah. So yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention as well, obviously, like the importance of dawah in a non-Muslim country, and especially from Muslim women. And I think what is important to mention is that dawah isn't, like you said, it's not just only one way you can do it. It doesn't mean you need to jump online and show yourself to the world or anything like that. You don't need to be standing on the street, handing out pamphlets. There's so many ways to give dawah, and especially as Muslim women, I think that part of our adherence to the hijab itself is a form of dawah in and of itself, because it does help to open up discussions with non-Muslims, especially in places where maybe people haven't had much interaction with Muslims. And I've heard this from many sisters. SubhanAllah, one of the sisters I spoke to, I think it was in season 2, she had mentioned, SubhanAllah, that she had, because she was wearing the niqab, she actually was approached by a lady, and the woman wanted to know why she's covering her face, and she had so many questions. And SubhanAllah, the woman ended up actually taking her shahada because just from speaking to this niqabi sister, and they had so much discussion, and the woman became a Muslim because of that. So people, all sometimes the Muslims themselves, they have this ideas in their head that, because you're wearing a niqab, you're blocking people from being able to accept Islam or see the beauty of Islam, because they believe that in the West there's so many negative kind of connotations that go along with the niqab. But these we know are there's stereotypes which have been made up. Like, a lot of them don't have any real basis to them. And I think that the more, especially reverts that we have in Western countries who choose to adopt, wearing, the niqab, specifically, obviously the hijab as well is obviously is good. But if you go that extra step further and you want to wear the full hijab with the niqab and everything, this is showing people that actually, we don't fit the stereotypes of what has been like kind of pushed out there. We're not like being forced by anybody. We've chosen to adopt this lifestyle, and we've come from lifestyles which was completely the opposite. So, you need to understand the reasons why we've chosen to accept it and adopt, this way of dressing, even though, the society in general is against it, and even though our own families may be against it. And what happens with a lot of younger sisters these days, I get many messages from sisters who, from various backgrounds, born Muslim or, into Muslim families or not, they want to wear the niqab, for example, and their parents who are Muslim are against it. This is something which is perfectly, it's very common now, actually. It's not that their parents want them to wear it, and that's whether they live in Muslim countries or not. So it's something that is exactly.
Can I actually tell you something? Let me tell you something that actually happened to me like 2 nights ago, based just on what you were saying. Sheikh Uthman Ibn Farouk from the One Message Foundation. So he was in Scotland giving a lecture in both Glasgow and Edinburgh, and I went with my sons, and it was fantastic, first of all. But when I was there, I actually bumped into some Niqabi sisters, and there isn't many Niqabi sisters. There is in that little area around that specific mosque, alhamdulillah. But usually you don't see many Niqabis in Glasgow. But I saw a couple, and we were, near each other, and we got talking. And this young woman, I think early 20s, I'm not sure exactly, but she had just started wearing, she had not long adopted niqab, and she's actually a teacher in mainstream school. And it was like proper traditional niqab. It wasn't even the sort of westernized version of niqab that we sometimes fall into as we're adapting and learning. No, she looked stunning, and she was wearing it, and she was telling me how she was a mainstream teacher, and I was like, oh, do you wear niqab as you teach in mainstream school? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, subhanallah. So I was saying to her, I was like, I was so surprised, like pleasantly, of course, pleasantly. But I was so surprised because it was mainstream. Like, we have some very few Islamic schools, and I thought, maybe it would probably be acceptable there. But when she said she was a mainstream, and I was like, how did you manage that? I worked in London, I worked in college, so it's a wee bit different in London. There's, it's very normal to be different and come from a different area and have a different religion and sort of look and practice that in different ways. So it's very acceptable there, but I just never expected to see that here. And she was saying that, it's something she recently adopted, so she never went into teaching like this. But when she decided that she wanted to do it, she communicated it to her superiors, and they embraced it. And I just thought, oh my days. That is amazing. So
Alhamdulillah.
that just happened like 2 days ago or something like that. It was amazing. It was such a nice conversation, and it just gave a wee bit of comfort, right? It gave a wee bit of comfort. So alhamdulillah, progress is being made, and sort of Muslims who are deciding to adopt these practices, which are again for our benefit, right? They're becoming braver. They are learning that sometimes you have to sort of push the status quo for the greater good. And sometimes we anticipate that everything is going to fall apart, that it's going to be met with aggression and everything else. But sometimes if you just try, you realise that actually everything falls into place, and it's not it's quite what it seems. You know, like my first job interview with a Niqab on, the person who was interviewing me was Muslim, but she wasn't visibly Muslim. She didn't wear
you mentioned the story in your previous interview. So anybody who's listening now, I'm not going to let her finish saying the story now, because you should go and listen to the other interview that I did with her.
But yeah, like it turned into a proper fiasco. I'll try not to say too much. You can cut out what you want. But it turned into a proper fiasco to the point where I just thought, I almost guaranteed that I wasn't getting the job. But it didn't work out quite like that. Actually, the details of it were really different and unique in the sort of funniest and best of ways. So I would definitely say be fearless. Don't just not do something because of your fear. You know, try, put yourself out there and see what happens. Sometimes we plan on Allah plans, you know. So yeah.
I hope that inshallah sisters will benefit from this, and especially those who have families with those who are coming from families who they're dealing with autism, for example, or even the other points we've mentioned to do with the niqab and women in dawah. If you do have any suggestions or comments, please do write them in the description box. And we'd love to hear your feedback, inshallah. Unless you're going to ask us why we're wearing the niqab. SubhanAllah, we don't
We've
need
already
that
answered it. You need to listen. But yeah, no, I just want to say though, just in case, but if I've said anything wrong, it's from me and my limitations, okay? My need for knowledge and any good is from Allah.
Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu feekum, sis. That's been a pleasure as always. And have a blessed day, inshallah.
Inshallah, you too, sis, you too.
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.